Jamie Rodriguez never imagined that cleaning a restaurant bathroom would lead to a private jet, champagne towers, and the glittering shores of the French Riviera. When she discovered a diamond necklace worth more than her annual salary forgotten beside the sink, she had a choice that would change everything. She could have walked away, could have told herself that fortune favors the bold, but instead she did something that would catch the attention of one of the world's most powerful families. What happened next defied every expectation she'd ever had about the kindness of strangers, the weight of gratitude, and how a single moment of integrity can bridge the vast divide between two completely different worlds. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The fluorescent lights of Bella Vista restaurant hummed their familiar tune as Jamie Rodriguez wiped down table after table, her feet aching in the cheap sneakers she'd worn thin over countless shifts. The dinner rush had finally ended, leaving behind the usual aftermath of crumpled napkins, scattered breadcrumbs, and the lingering aroma of garlic and oregano that seemed permanently embedded in her uniform. At 26, Jamie had been waiting tables for 8 years, ever since she dropped out of community college to help support her younger brother through his battle with leukemia. The medical bills had drained their family's savings, and dreams of becoming a graphic designer had gradually faded into the background noise of survival. She glanced at the clock above the kitchen pass, noting that it was nearly 11. In another hour, she'd be free to drive home to her studio apartment, where leftover pasta and late-night reruns awaited. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, and after years of financial uncertainty, she'd learned to find contentment in small victories, like making rent on time and having enough groceries to last the week. "Jamie, could you check the ladies' room before we close?" called Marcus, the night manager, from behind the bar where he was counting the evening's receipts. His tone carried the weary authority of someone who'd spent too many years in the restaurant business, but Jamie had always appreciated his straightforward approach to management. He didn't micromanage, didn't play favorites, and always made sure the staff got their fair share of tips. "Sure thing," she replied, grabbing her cleaning supplies from the storage closet. The women's restroom at Bella Vista was actually one of the nicer ones she'd encountered in her years of restaurant work. The owners had renovated it just 2 years ago, installing marble-look tiles and brushed gold fixtures that gave it an upscale feel, despite the restaurant's modest pricing. It was the kind of place where local families celebrated anniversaries, and business people brought clients for power lunches, striking a balance between accessibility and elegance. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door, Jamie immediately noticed something glinting on the narrow shelf beside the sinks. Her breath caught as she approached, recognizing the unmistakable sparkle of diamonds, even in the harsh overhead lighting. The necklace was absolutely stunning, a delicate platinum chain supporting what appeared to be a flawless solitaire diamond surrounded by smaller stones in an intricate vintage setting. Even with her limited knowledge of jewelry, Jamie could tell this piece was worth more money than she'd see in several years of wages. She picked it up carefully, feeling the surprising weight of the metal and stones. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with tiny engravings along the chain that spoke of custom work rather than mass production. As she held it up to the light, the central diamond threw rainbows across the bathroom wall, each facet catching and reflecting the fluorescent bulbs above. This wasn't costume jewelry, or even the kind of expensive pieces she occasionally saw customers wearing. This was the sort of necklace that belonged in a vault, insured for astronomical amounts, and worn only on the most special occasions. For a moment, just a moment, Jamie allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to own something so beautiful. She thought about her own jewelry box at home, containing mostly pieces from department stores and a few sentimental items from her grandmother. The contrast was stark, highlighting the vast economic divide that separated her world from whoever had carelessly left this treasure behind. But the fantasy lasted only seconds before her innate sense of right and wrong reasserted itself. Jamie had been raised by parents who believed that character was measured not by what you had, but by what you did when nobody was watching. Her mother, Maria, had cleaned office buildings for 30 years, often finding valuable items left behind by wealthy executives. Never once had she kept anything that wasn't hers, always turning items into building security even when they were worth more than she made in a month. "Our integrity is worth more than money," Maria had always said, And those words had shaped Jamie's moral compass from an early age. Still, as she stood there holding the necklace, Jamie couldn't help but think about her mounting student loan debt. The medical bills that continued to arrive even though her brother had been in remission for 2 years, and the car repairs she'd been putting off because she couldn't afford them. This single piece of jewelry could solve every financial problem she had, could give her the freedom to go back to school, to pursue her dreams instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck. The temptation was real and powerful, but it lasted only as long as it took her to remember her brother's face during his treatment, and how the kindness of strangers had made all the difference during their darkest hours. Without further hesitation, Jamie secured the necklace in her apron pocket and finished cleaning the restroom. When she emerged, Marcus was still at the bar, now wiping down glasses and preparing to close out the register. The restaurant had that peaceful quiet that comes after a busy service, with most of the kitchen staff already gone and only the essential closing tasks remaining. "Marcus, I found something in the ladies' room," Jamie said, approaching the bar with the necklace carefully cupped in her hands. "Someone left this behind." Marcus looked up from his task, and his eyes widened as he took in the glittering piece. He set down the glass he'd been holding and whistled low under his breath. "Holy shit, Jamie. That's not exactly the kind of thing people usually forget in our bathroom." He reached for his reading glasses, perching them on his nose as he examined the necklace more closely. "This looks like the real deal. I mean, serious money, real deal." "I know," Jamie replied, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "What should we do with it?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking through their options. In his 15 years managing restaurants, he dealt with forgotten phones, wallets, and even the occasional expensive watch, but nothing quite like this. "Well, we can't just put it in the lost and found box with the umbrellas and reading glasses. This needs to go in the safe tonight, and tomorrow we'll need to think about how to find the owner. Maybe we should call the police?" "That makes sense," Jamie agreed, though she wondered how many people would have been tempted to simply pocket such a valuable item. She was proud of herself for doing the right thing, but also aware that her decision might have been easier because the necklace was so obviously expensive that keeping it would have felt like theft of the highest order. There was no way to rationalize taking something that clearly belonged to a world far removed from her own. Marcus carefully placed the necklace in a small velvet bag he kept behind the bar for holding jewelry during busy shifts. When customers occasionally asked servers to hold their earrings or bracelets while they ate messy dishes. Then he locked it in the restaurant's safe, a heavy steel box bolted to the floor in his office. "I'll make some calls tomorrow," he promised Jamie. "Maybe start with the non-emergency police line. See what they recommend for something like this." The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Jamie's mood as she prepared for another double shift. She'd worked at Bella Vista long enough to know that Fridays were usually busy, with office workers celebrating the end of the week and families coming in for early dinners before weekend activities. She tied her hair back in its usual ponytail, checked that her apron was clean and her order pad well stocked with pens, and tried to push thoughts of the mysterious necklace from her mind. But as the morning progressed, she found herself watching each customer who entered, wondering if one of them might be the necklace's owner returning to search for their lost treasure. She served coffee to a table of businesswomen in expensive suits, took orders from a group of tourists comparing guidebooks, and refilled water glasses for a family with 3 young children, but none of them seemed like the type to own such an extraordinary piece of jewelry. Around noon, Marcus appeared from his office with a concerned expression. "Jamie, could I speak with you for a minute?" he asked, gesturing toward the back of the restaurant. Her stomach tightened with worry, wondering if somehow she'd done something wrong by turning in the necklace, if there were complications she hadn't anticipated. "I made some calls this morning," Marcus began once they were out of earshot of customers. "Starting with the police, like we discussed. They took down the information but said unless someone files a report about a missing necklace, there's not much they can do. They suggested we also try calling some of the high-end jewelry stores in the area, see if anyone recognizes the piece or if someone's been asking about insurance claims." Jamie nodded, though the complexity of the situation was beginning to dawn on her. "Did you try calling any stores yet?" "I called 3 places," Marcus replied. 2 of them said they'd never seen anything like it, but the third one, Prestige Jewelers downtown. That was interesting. The owner, Mrs. Chen, asked me to describe it in detail. And when I mentioned the vintage setting and the specific cut of the center stone, she got very quiet. Then she asked if she could see it in person. What do you think that means? Jamie asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. I think it means this necklace is even more special than we thought. She's coming by around 3, if that's okay with you. I told her you were the one who found it, and she specifically asked to meet you. The rest of Jamie's shift passed in a blur of serving lunch specials and refilling coffee cups, but her mind kept returning to the mysterious necklace and the upcoming meeting with Mrs. Chen. She'd walked past Prestige Jewelers many times over the years, always pausing to admire the beautiful pieces displayed in their windows, but never daring to go inside. It was the kind of establishment that catered to engagement rings costing more than her annual salary and anniversary gifts that required appointment viewings. At exactly 3 o'clock, an elegant woman in her 60s entered Bella Vista, her silver hair styled in a sophisticated bob, and her dark eyes scanning the restaurant with the practiced assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating valuable items. She wore a simple but clearly expensive black suit and carried a leather briefcase that suggested serious business. Jamie felt suddenly self-conscious in her work uniform, but Mrs. Chen's warm smile immediately put her at ease. You must be Jamie, Mrs. Chen said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. Marcus tells me you're the one who found the necklace? Yes, ma'am, Jamie replied, shaking the offered hand and noting the firm, confident grip. It was just sitting on the shelf by the bathroom sinks. I couldn't believe someone had left something so beautiful behind. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. In my experience, people who find valuable items and turn them in are becoming increasingly rare. You should be proud of your integrity. She gestured toward a quiet corner booth. Would you mind if we sat down? I'd like to show you something. Once they were seated, Mrs. Chen opened her briefcase and withdrew a tablet computer, quickly navigating to what appeared to be a jewelry database. When Marcus described the necklace to me, it sounded familiar, very familiar. She turned the tablet toward Jamie, revealing a high-resolution photograph of an identical necklace. This is the Meridian diamond, created by Cartier in 1952 for a prominent American family. It's been in private hands ever since, but pieces like this are well documented in our industry databases. Jamie studied the photograph, noting every detail that matched the necklace currently locked in Marcus's safe. The vintage setting, the specific cut of the central diamond, even the tiny engravings along the chain were identical. So you know who it belongs to? I have a very good idea, Mrs. Chen replied, her expression growing more serious. But I need to see the actual piece to confirm. Would that be possible? Marcus appeared with the velvet bag, having been listening from nearby. He carefully placed it on the table, and Mrs. Chen opened it with the reverence of someone who understood they were handling museum-quality art. She withdrew a small magnifying glass from her briefcase and examined the necklace closely, paying particular attention to the engravings and the setting of the stones. After several minutes of careful inspection, Mrs. Chen sat back with a satisfied nod. This is definitely the Meridian diamond. I can tell by the maker's marks and the specific characteristics of the central stone. She looked directly at Jamie. Do you have any idea whose family this belongs to? Jamie shook her head, though she was beginning to understand that she'd stumbled upon something far more significant than a simply expensive piece of jewelry. I was hoping you could tell us. Mrs. Chen smiled, but there was something almost mischievous in her expression. The Meridian diamond belongs to the Castellano family. Specifically, it was a gift from shipping magnate Alessandro Castellano to his daughter Sofia on her 21st birthday 3 years ago. Alessandro Castellano owns one of the largest maritime transport companies in the world, and his daughter is, well, let's just say she's accustomed to a very different lifestyle than most of us. The name Castellano was vaguely familiar to Jamie, though she couldn't place where she'd heard it. So, she's wealthy? I mean, obviously wealthy, but like how wealthy are we talking? Forbes estimates Alessandra's net worth at around $12 billion, Mrs. Chen replied casually, as if she were discussing the sea. Weather. The family has shipping interests in 43 countries, and they're known for their philanthropy as well as their business acumen. They're also extremely private people, which makes this situation rather delicate. Jamie felt her mouth go dry. She'd returned a piece of jewelry belonging to one of the world's richest families, people who lived in a universe so far removed from her own that they might as well have been from another planet. What happens now? Mrs. Chen carefully placed the necklace back in its velvet bag. Now, I contact the family's security team. They have people who handle situations like this, though I imagine they don't encounter many people who find $12 million necklaces and simply turn them in. 12 million? Jamie repeated, the number hitting her like a physical blow. She'd held $12 million in her hands, and never even considered keeping it. The amount was so astronomical that it barely seemed real, more like monopoly money than actual currency. The central diamond alone is worth $8 million, Mrs. Chen explained. The vintage Cartier setting and the provenance add significant value. This isn't just jewelry, it's a piece of art history. She stood, gathering her briefcase and the necklace. I'll be in touch with both of you very soon. The Castellano family has a reputation for being very generous with people who help them, especially in situations like this. After Mrs. Chen left, Jamie found herself unable to concentrate on her remaining tables. The magnitude of what had happened was slowly sinking in, and she kept replaying the moment she'd found the necklace, wondering what kind of person casually wears $12 million around their neck and then forgets it in a braai. Restaurant bathroom. The Castellano family inhabited a world so far beyond her experience that she couldn't even imagine what their daily lives must be like. The weekend passed slowly, with Jamie working her usual Saturday night shift and spending Sunday catching up on laundry and grocery shopping. She'd told her roommate Sarah about finding the necklace, though she'd downplayed its value, not wanting to deal with questions about why she'd been so quick to turn it in. Sarah worked as a nurse at the local hospital and had her own strong moral compass, but Jamie knew that even good people might struggle with the temptation of such an enormous sum of money. Monday morning brought an unexpected phone call that would change everything. Jamie was getting ready for her early shift when her phone rang, displaying a number she didn't recognize with an international area code. She almost didn't answer, assuming it was a spam call, but something made her pick up. "Is this Jamie Rodriguez?" asked a crisp, professional voice with a slight accent that might have been British or possibly European. "Yes, this is Jamie," she replied cautiously, wondering if she was about to be subjected to a sales pitch for extended car warranties or vacation timeshares. "Ms. Rodriguez, my name is Catherine Walsh, and I work for the Castellano family's private security team. I believe you recently found something belonging to Miss Sofia Castellano?" Jamie's heart started beating faster. "Yes, I found a necklace at the restaurant where I work. Mrs. Chen from Prestige Jewelers said it belonged to your family." "Indeed it does, and I'm calling to express the family's profound gratitude for your honesty and integrity. Miss Sophia is particularly grateful, as the necklace has significant sentimental value beyond its monetary worth. It was a gift from her father, and she was devastated when she realized it was missing." "I'm just glad we could get it back to her," Jamie replied, though she was curious about how someone could forget such a valuable item. "I hope she wasn't too worried about it." There was a pause, and Jamie could hear papers rustling in the background. "Miss Rodriguez, the family would very much like to thank you in person. Would you be available this coming weekend for a short trip?" "A trip?" Jamie repeated, confusion evident in her voice. "What kind of trip?" "The family maintains a residence in Monaco, and they would be honored to host you there as their guest. All expenses would be covered, of course, including first-class airfare, accommodations, and meals. Consider it a small token of their appreciation for your remarkable honesty." Jamie's mind reeled. Monaco. She'd seen pictures of the glamorous principality in magazines and movies, but the idea of actually going there had never even entered her realm of possibility. "I don't understand. Why would they want to thank me so elaborately? I just did what anyone should do." Catherine's laugh was warm and genuine. "Miss Rodriguez, In our experience, not everyone would have done what you did. The family has encountered many people over the years who are more interested in their wealth than their well-being. Your actions demonstrate a character that they find refreshing and admirable." The offer was so surreal that Jamie wondered if she might be dreaming or if this was some elaborate prank. "I would need to get time off work, and I don't even have a passport." "Those details can be arranged," Catherine assured her. "The family has resources that can expedite passport applications, and I'm sure your employer would understand the unique nature of this situation. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Miss Rodriguez. The Castellano family doesn't extend invitations lightly." After hanging up, Jamie sat on her bed staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. She was being invited to Monaco by one of the world's wealthiest families, all because she'd done what her parents had taught her was simply the right thing to do. The surreal nature of the situation made her wonder if she'd somehow stumbled into a fairy tale, though she knew that real life rarely worked out like Disney movies. She called Marcus to explain the situation, and his reaction was a mixture of excitement and protective concern. "Jamie, this is incredible. But you need to be careful. Rich people don't always have the same motivations as the rest of us. Make sure this is legitimate before you agree to anything." But when Catherine called back later that day with specific details about the trip, including confirmation numbers for flights and hotel reservations, the reality of the situation began to sink in. She would be flying from Los Angeles to Nice, France, on Thursday evening, staying at the Hotel Hermitage in Monte Carlo for 3 nights, and returning on Monday morning. A car service would pick her up at the airport, and the family's personal stylist would ensure she had appropriate clothing for their various planned activities. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparation that felt like an out-of-body experience. The expedited passport arrived on Wednesday, just as Catherine had promised, and Jamie found herself packing clothes she wasn't even sure would be appropriate for hobnobbing with billionaires. Sarah helped her choose outfits, though they both acknowledged that Jamie's wardrobe wasn't exactly designed for Mediterranean luxury resorts. Thursday evening found Jamie sitting in a first-class airline seat for the first time in her life, sipping champagne that probably cost more than she made in a day, and trying to wrap her head around the rapid transformation of her circumstances. The flight attendants treated her with the kind of deferential service she'd only seen in movies, and she found herself wondering what the Castellano family had told them about their guest. As the plane soared over the Atlantic, Jamie gazed out at the star-filled sky and reflected on the chain of events that had brought her to this moment. Less than a week ago, her biggest concern had been whether she could afford to fix her car's air conditioning before summer arrived. Now she was flying to one of the world's most exclusive destinations as the personal guest of a family whose wealth was measured in billions rather than dollars. The flight to Nice took 11 hours, but the comfort of first-class accommodations made the journey pass more quickly than Jamie had expected. She managed to sleep for several hours, waking to find the sun rising over the Mediterranean as the plane began its descent. Through the window, she could see the coastline of southern France stretching out below, dotted with white buildings that seemed to glow in the morning light. At the Nice airport, Jamie was met by a driver holding a sign with her name, just as Catherine had promised. The man introduced himself as Philippe and spoke English with a charming French accent, explaining that he would be her driver throughout her stay. The car was a sleek black Mercedes that smelled of leather and expensive cologne, and as they pulled onto the coastal highway toward Monaco, Jamie got her first real glimpse of the world she was about to enter. The French Riviera was even more beautiful than she'd imagined, with azure waters stretching to the horizon and hillsides covered in white villas that looked like something from a postcard. As they drove through small coastal towns, Jamie saw outdoor cafes where elegantly dressed people sipped coffee and read newspapers, their casual sophistication suggesting lives lived without financial worry. Everything seemed touched by a golden light that made even ordinary moments appear magical. "First time to Monaco?" Philippe asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror as they navigated the winding coastal road. "First time to Europe," Jamie admitted, feeling slightly embarrassed by her inexperience. "I've never been anywhere like this." Philippe smiled warmly. "Monaco is special, even for those of us who live here. You will see." As they crested a hill, he gestured toward the vista ahead. Voila, Monaco. Jamie's breath caught as she took in her first view of the principality. The tiny nation clung to the mountainside like a jewel, its white buildings cascading down toward a harbor filled with yachts that looked more like floating palaces than boats. The famous Monte Carlo casino gleamed in the afternoon sun, and everywhere she looked, Jamie saw evidence of wealth beyond her wildest imagination. The Hotel Hermitage sat directly on the harbor, its Belle Epoque facade suggesting old-world elegance refined over generations. As Philippe helped her from the car, Jamie felt momentarily overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding her. Guests moved through the lobby with the confident bearing of people accustomed to luxury, their clothes and accessories suggesting personal stylists and unlimited shopping budgets. At the front desk, Jamie was greeted by name and escorted to a suite that was larger than her entire apartment back home. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Mediterranean, and the furnishings were the kind of antiques she'd only seen in museums. A bottle of champagne waited on the coffee table, along with a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. "Dear Miss Rodriguez," the note began in elegant handwriting. "Welcome to Monaco. We are so looking forward to meeting you tomorrow evening. Please enjoy the amenities of the hotel in the city. A car will collect you at 7 o'clock for dinner at our home. With warmest regards, the Castellano family." Jamie set the note aside and walked to the windows, still unable to believe that this was her reality. Below, she could see people walking along the harbor, some stopping to admire the massive yachts anchored in the marina. One yacht in particular caught her attention, easily 3 times the size of the others, with a helicopter landing pad and what appeared to be multiple swimming pools. She wondered if it might belong to her hosts, though she quickly realized that in Monaco, ostentatious displays of wealth were probably commonplace. That evening, Jamie decided to explore the immediate area around her hotel, wanting to get a feel for Monaco before meeting the Castellano family. She walked along the harbor promenade, marveling at the yachts and the people who moved among them with casual familiarity. At a waterfront cafe, she ordered a simple dinner and a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed almost too perfect to be real. The next day brought a visit from Isabel, the family's personal stylist, who arrived at Jamie's suite with several garment bags and an infectious enthusiasm for her work. Isabel was a petite French woman in her 40s, with an eye for fashion that was immediately apparent in her own impeccable appearance. "The family wants you to feel completely comfortable during your visit," Isabel explained as she hung various outfits in Jamie's closet. "These pieces should work for the activities they have planned, and please consider them gifts. Madame Castellano specifically requested that you have something beautiful to remember your time here." The clothes were stunning. Designer pieces that Jamie recognized from magazine advertisements, but had never imagined wearing. There were cocktail dresses for evening events, casual but elegant outfits for daytime activities, and even a sophisticated pantsuit that made Jamie feel like she could conquer the business world. Everything fit perfectly, suggesting that the family had somehow obtained her measurements in advance. As 7 o'clock approached, Jamie found herself growing increasingly nervous about the evening ahead. She'd chosen a midnight blue cocktail dress that Isabel had particularly recommended, paired with jewelry that was elegant but modest compared to the $12 million necklace that had started this entire adventure. When Philippe arrived to collect her, his approving nod suggested she'd chosen appropriately. The drive to the Castellano residence took them higher into the hills above Monaco, past gates that concealed sprawling estates and gardens that suggested armies of landscapers. Finally, they turned through an entrance marked only by a discreet brass nameplate, following a winding driveway through manicured grounds that seemed to stretch for acres. The house itself was breathtaking, a modern architectural masterpiece that seemed to grow organically from the hillside. Glass walls offered unobstructed views of the Mediterranean, and infinity pools created the illusion that the property extended directly into the sea. Subtle lighting highlighted sculptural elements and carefully chosen plantings, creating an atmosphere that was both dramatic and serene. As Jamie approached the front entrance, the door opened to reveal a woman in her early 20s, with dark hair and striking features that suggested Mediterranean ancestry. She wore a simple but clearly expensive white dress, and a warm smile that immediately put Jamie at ease. "You must be Jamie," the young woman said, extending her hand in greeting. "I'm Sofia Castellano, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am for what you did." Jamie shook the offered hand, noting that Sofia's grip was firm and her manner refreshingly natural, despite her obvious wealth and privilege. "It's wonderful to meet you, Sofia. I'm just glad we could get your necklace back to you safely. Please, come in," Sofia said, leading Jamie through a foyer that featured a dramatic chandelier and artwork that looked like it belonged in a world-class museum. "My father is very excited to meet you. He's been talking about your honesty all week." The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior, with soaring ceilings and an open floor plan that maximized the spectacular views. Everything was designed with exquisite taste, from the custom furniture to the carefully curated art collection that lined the walls. But despite the obvious expense involved in every detail, the space felt warm and inviting rather than intimidating. They found Alessandro Castellano on a terrace overlooking the sea, a distinguished man in his late 50s, with silver hair and intelligent eyes that suggested a keen business mind. He rose as they approached, extending his hand to Jamie with a genuine smile that immediately dispelled any nervousness she might have felt. "Ms. Rodriguez, welcome to our home," he said, his accent carrying hints of his Italian heritage. "I cannot adequately express how grateful we are for your integrity and kindness." "Please, call me Jamie," she replied, shaking his hand and noting the same firm grip she'd noticed in his daughter. "I really just did what anyone should do." Alessandro's laugh was warm and genuine. "In our experience, Jamie, not everyone would have done what you did. We've encountered many people over the years who are more interested in what they could gain from knowing us than in simply doing the right thing. Your actions demonstrate a character that is increasingly rare in today's world." End quote. As they settled into comfortable chairs, arranged to take advantage of the view, Sofia rejoined them carrying the famous necklace in its velvet bag. "I wanted to show you something," she said to Jamie, carefully removing the necklace and holding it up to catch the evening light. "When my father gave this to me on my 21st birthday, he told me it represented not just his love, but the values our family tries to live by: integrity, kindness, and the understanding that true wealth comes from how we treat others." Jamie studied the necklace again, seeing it now not just as an expensive piece of jewelry, but as a symbol of family bonds and shared values. "It's absolutely beautiful. I can understand why you were so upset when you realized it was missing." "I was devastated," Sofia admitted. "Not just because of its monetary value, but because it connects me to my father and to our family's history. When I got the call that someone had found it and turned it in without hesitation, I honestly couldn't believe it." Alessandro leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "We've been discussing how to properly thank you, Jamie, and we've come up with something we hope you'll find meaningful." He gestured toward an envelope that had been placed on the table between them. "We know you work in a restaurant, and we imagine you have dreams and ambitions beyond waiting tables. We'd like to help you pursue those dreams." Jamie's heart began beating faster as she realized the envelope might contain far more than a simple thank you note. "I don't understand. You've already been so generous, bringing me here and showing me such kindness." "Open it," Sofia encouraged, her eyes bright with anticipation. With trembling hands, Jamie opened the envelope and withdrew what appeared to be a check. When she saw the amount, her vision blurred, and she had to set the check down on the table, unable to process what she was seeing. The check was made out to her in the amount of $1 million. "I can't accept this," she said immediately, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is too much. I can't possibly accept this." Alessandro smiled gently. "Jamie, you returned something worth $12 million without a moment's hesitation. You didn't investigate its value. You didn't try to negotiate a reward. You simply did what you believed was right. That kind of integrity is worth far more than money. But we hope this gift will allow you to pursue opportunities you might not otherwise see. Have. We researched your background a little," Sofia added, her tone apologetic. "I hope you don't mind, but we wanted to understand who you are and what challenges you might be facing. We learned about your brother's medical expenses, your student loans, and the dreams you've had to put on hold. This is our way of saying that good people deserve good things." Jamie felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as the magnitude of their gesture sank in. $1 million would not only solve every financial problem she had, but would give her the freedom to go back to school, to pursue her passion for graphic design, to help her family in ways she'd never been able to before. But accepting such an enormous gift felt overwhelming, almost frightening in its generosity. "I need you to understand something," she said, looking directly at both father and daughter. "When I found that necklace, I never once considered keeping it. Not because I hoped for a reward, but because it wasn't mine. My parents taught me that integrity isn't about what you can get away with, it's about who you are, when nobody's watching." "Which is exactly why we want to do this," Alessandro replied. "In our world, we encounter many people who are kind to us because they want something in return. Your actions demonstrate that you would have done the right thing regardless of who owned that necklace or what they might be able to give you in return. That's the kind of character we want to celebrate and support." As the evening progressed, Jamie found herself relaxing into conversation with her hosts, discovering that despite their immense wealth, they were genuinely warm and interested people. Alessandro told stories about building his shipping empire from a single vessel his grandfather had owned in Sicily, while Sofia shared her passion for marine conservation and the foundation she'd started to protect Mediterranean ecosystems. They dined on the terrace as the sun set over the Mediterranean, served by discreet staff who appeared and disappeared like elegant ghosts. The food was extraordinary, prepared by a chef who had clearly trained in the world's finest restaurants. But the conversation was even better. Jamie found herself sharing stories about her family, her work, and her dreams, feeling heard and valued in a way that had nothing to do with money or status. "What would you do?" Sofia asked as they shared dessert, "if money were no object? What dreams would you pursue?" Jamie thought carefully before answering. "I've always wanted to go back to school and study graphic design. I love creating beautiful things, whether it's designing menus for the restaurant or making birthday cards for my friends. But more than that, I'd want to use whatever skills I develop to help other people. Maybe design materials for nonprofits, or teach kids who can't afford art classes." Alessandro and Sofia exchanged a meaningful look, and Jamie sensed that her answer had somehow been exactly what they hoped to hear. "Those are beautiful goals," Alessandro said, "and with the right resources, completely achievable." As the evening wound down, Jamie found herself reluctant to leave this magical place and return to her hotel. But Sofia walked her to the car, and as they said their goodbyes, she pressed a small wrapped package into Jamie's hands. "Don't open this until you get back to your room," Sofia said with a conspiratorial smile. "And please, don't feel like you need to make any decisions about the check tonight. Take time to think about it, talk to people you trust. We just want you to know that we believe in you." Back at the Hotel Hermitage, Jamie sat on her bed holding both the check and the mysterious package, still struggling to believe that any of this was real. The check represented more money than she'd ever imagined having. Enough to transform not just her own life, but the lives of everyone she cared about. But accepting it felt like crossing a threshold into a world she wasn't sure she belonged in. Finally, she unwrapped Sofia's gift, revealing a small leather journal with her initials embossed in gold on the cover. Inside the front cover, Sofia had written a note in the same elegant handwriting as her father, "For recording all the beautiful things you're going to create. Dream big, Jamie. The world needs more people like you." The simple thoughtfulness of the gift moved Jamie even more than the check had. This wasn't about money or grand gestures. It was about one person recognizing and encouraging another's potential. She opened the journal to its first blank page and began writing, trying to capture her thoughts and feelings about this extraordinary experience. The next morning brought another surprise when Catherine called to invite Jamie to join the family for a day on their yacht. "It's a beautiful day for sailing," Catherine explained, "and Sofia is eager to show you some of her favorite spots along the coast. The helicopter will collect you from the hotel at 10. Jamie had to ask Catherine to repeat the part about the helicopter, certain she'd misheard. But at 10 o'clock sharp, she found herself being helped into a sleek aircraft that lifted off from the hotel's helipad. offering spectacular aerial views of Monaco and the surrounding coastline. The pilot pointed out various landmarks as they flew, including several other palatial estates that belonged to celebrities and business moguls whose names Jamie recognized from magazine covers. The Castellano yacht was even more impressive up close than it had appeared from her hotel window, named Sophia's Dream. It was over 200 feet long and equipped with every conceivable luxury, from multiple swimming pools to a fully equipped gym and spa. But what struck Jamie most was how the yacht felt like a floating home, rather than just an ostentatious display of wealth. Family photographs lined the main salon, and comfortable reading nooks suggested that this was a place where the Castellanos actually relaxed and spent time together. Sophia met her at the gangway, dressed casually in white linen pants and a navy top that still managed to look effortlessly elegant. "I'm so glad you could join us," she said, linking arms with Jamie as they walked toward the main deck. "I wanted to show you something special." They sailed east along the coast, past rocky cliffs and hidden coves where the water was so clear Jamie could see the sandy bottom 30 feet below. Sophia proved to be an enthusiastic guide, pointing out medieval villages perched on hillsides and explaining the history of various coastal landmarks. But Jamie sensed that her host had something specific in mind for their destination. "There," Sophia said finally, gesturing toward a secluded bay surrounded by pine-covered hills. "This is one of my favorite places in the world." As the yacht anchored in the pristine bay, Sophia led Jamie to a quiet spot on the upper deck where they could talk privately. "I wanted to bring you here because this is where I come when I need to think about what really matters in life," she began. "It's easy to get caught up in the material aspects of wealth, to forget that money is just a tool for creating the life you want to live." Jamie nodded, understanding that Sophia was trying to share something important about her own relationship with wealth and privilege. "It must be challenging sometimes, having so much when so many people have so little." "It is," Sophia admitted. "That's part of why your actions meant so much to us. You demonstrated that integrity and kindness aren't commodities that can be bought. They're choices that define who we are as people. My father built his business on the principle that trust is more valuable than profit, and you embodied that principle perfectly." They spent the afternoon swimming in the crystal-clear water and talking about their respective dreams and challenges. Sophia shared her struggles with finding genuine relationships when people often wanted to befriend her for her money, while Jamie talked about the weight of financial responsibility and the fear of taking risks when failure could impact her entire family. "That's why we want to help," Sophia said, as they watched the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. "Not because we feel sorry for you, but because we believe you have something valuable to offer the world. The money isn't charity. It's an investment in someone we believe will use it to make a positive difference." As they sailed back toward Monaco, Jamie felt a sense of clarity beginning to emerge from the swirl of emotions and uncertainty that had dominated her thoughts. Since receiving the check, she was beginning to understand that accepting the Castellanos' gift wouldn't just change her own life. It would give her the opportunity to extend the same kind of generosity to others that had been shown to her. That evening's dinner was a more intimate affair, just Jamie, Sophia, and Alessandro dining in a private room at the renowned Café de Paris. The restaurant overlooked a famous Monte Carlo casino, and Jamie watched through the windows as elegantly dressed people moved between luxury cars and the casino's ornate entrance, their easy confidence suggesting lives lived without financial constraints. "Have you thought about our offer?" Alessandro asked over coffee, his tone gentle but curious. Jamie took a deep breath, having spent much of the day preparing for this moment. "I have, and I want you to know how deeply grateful I am. But I need to ask you something. If I accept this gift, what happens next? Do you expect regular updates on how I'm using the money? Do I become some kind of project for your family?" Alessandro smiled at her directness. "Jamie, once that check is deposited into your account, the money becomes yours to use as you see fit. We're not looking for control or ongoing involvement in your life, though we hope you'll consider us friends. Our only expectation is that you'll use this opportunity to become the person you're meant to be. And if I make mistakes along the way, if I use some of the money poorly or make decisions you disagree with, then you'll be human." Sophia interjected with a laugh. "We're not expecting perfection, Jamie. We're investing in potential, not purchasing predetermined outcomes. Jamie felt the last of her reservations dissolving. In that case, I would be honored to accept your gift, but I want you to know that I intend to pay it forward. I don't know exactly how yet, but I want to use this opportunity to help other people the way you've helped me. Alessandro raised his wine glass in a toast. To new beginnings and the ripple effects of kindness, he said. May your actions inspire others the way they've inspired us. The final day of Jamie's stay in Monaco was spent exploring the Principality with Sophia as her guide. They visited the prince's palace, walked through the exotic gardens that cascaded down the mountainside, and spent time in the Monte Carlo district, where Sophia pointed out restaurants and shops favored by locals versus tourists. But the highlight was their visit to the offices of Sophia's Marine Conservation Foundation, where Jamie met researchers and activists working to protect Mediterranean ecosystems. This is what I use my privilege for, Sophia explained as they toured laboratories where scientists were studying coral reef restoration techniques. Money gives you options, but it's what you choose to do with those options that defines your character. As Jamie watched Sophia interact with the foundation staff, she could see genuine passion and commitment rather than the detached philanthropy she might have expected from someone born into enormous wealth. It was clear that Sophia viewed her foundation not as a hobby or tax write-off, but as her life's work and primary contribution to the world. On her final evening, the Castellanos hosted a small dinner party that included several of their friends and business associates. Jamie found herself seated next to Dr. Elena Martinez, a marine biologist who worked with Sophia's foundation, and across from Jean-Paul Dubois, a French art dealer who specialized in Chalma. Contemporary works by emerging artists. Sophia tells me you're interested in graphic design, Jean-Paul said during the main course. That's fascinating. The intersection of visual communication and social impact is becoming increasingly important in my field. As the conversation flowed around the table, Jamie realized that the Castellanos had carefully chosen their guest list to include people who might inspire or advise her as she pursued her own dreams. Dr. Martinez talked about the importance of visual communication in environmental advocacy, while Jean-Paul shared stories of artists who had used their work to drive social change. The most successful people I know, said Isabella Romano, a tech entrepreneur who had built a company focused on educational software, are those who understand that success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about using whatever platform you build to lift others up as well. As the evening concluded, Jamie found herself exchanging contact information with several of the guests, people who had offered mentorship, advice, and connections that could prove invaluable as she navigated her browse. New circumstances. The Castellanos hadn't just given her money. They'd introduced her to a network of accomplished individuals who shared her values and could help guide her journey. The flight home to Los Angeles gave Jamie 12 hours to process everything that had happened and begin planning her next steps. She decided to return to the restaurant for at least a few more weeks, both to give Marcus adequate notice and to maintain some normalcy while she figured out how to manage her sudden change in circumstances. But she'd already begun researching graphic design programs and making lists of the debts she wanted to pay off first. More importantly, she'd started sketching ideas for a foundation of her own, something focused on providing educational opportunities for young people from low-income families. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd gone from being someone who needed help to someone with the resources to provide it, all because she'd done what her parents had taught her was simply the right thing to do. When she walked into Bella Vista for her first shift back, Marcus greeted her with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "So, how was Monaco?" he asked, as if the question were perfectly normal rather than completely surreal. "Life-changing," Jamie replied honestly, "but I'll tell you all about it later. Right now, I need to get back to work." As she tied on her apron and picked up her order pad, Jamie felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. The expensive clothes Isabel had chosen for her were hanging in her closet at home, and the check that would transform her life was safely deposited in her bank account. But she was still the same person who believed in doing the right thing, regardless of the consequences. "Table 12 needs their check," Marcus called from behind the bar, and Jamie smiled as she walked across the familiar dining room to take care of her customers. She had plans and dreams now that extended far beyond waiting tables, but for today, this was exactly where she belonged. Over the following weeks, as Jamie began implementing her plans for returning to school and starting her foundation, she often thought about the moment she'd found the Meridian diamond necklace glinting on the bathroom shelf. She'd made a split-second decision based on values instilled by her parents, never imagining that single choice would ripple outward to change not just her own life, but potentially the lives of countless others she might now be able to help. The Castellanos had taught her that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the positive impact you could have on other people's lives. As she worked on her first graphic design project, a brochure for a local literacy program, Jamie smiled at the knowledge that she was already beginning to pay forward the extraordinary gift she'd received. 3 months later, when she received her acceptance letter to design school, along with news that her scholarship application had been approved, Jamie wrote a thank you note to the Castellano family on stationery from her new company, Rodriguez Design Studios. The letter was brief but heartfelt. "Thank you for believing in me before I learned to believe in myself. I promise to honor your faith by using every opportunity to help others discover their own potential." The response came quickly, handwritten on familiar cream-colored paper. "Dear Jamie, we always knew you would do extraordinary things. The world is lucky to have you in it. With love and admiration, Alessandro and Sofia." Castellano. As Jamie framed the letter and hung it in her new studio space, she reflected on how a simple act of honesty had opened doors she'd never even known existed. But more than that, it had connected her with people who understood that the greatest luxury in life wasn't material wealth, but the ability to make a positive difference in the world. The Meridian diamond necklace had found its way home, but its brief disappearance had created something far more valuable than the $12 million it was worth. It had created connections between people, opportunities for growth, and a ripple effect of kindness that would continue spreading long after the last diamond had lost its sparkle. Years later, when Jamie's foundation had helped hundreds of young people pursue their educational dreams, and when her design work had raised millions for various charitable causes, she would still remember that moment in the restaurant bathroom when she'd held fortune in her hands and chosen integrity instead. It remained the decision she was most proud of, not because of what it had brought her, but because of who it had revealed her to be. The story of the waitress who found a necklace and returned it to a billionaire's daughter had become something of a legend in Monaco, often told at dinner parties as an example of how character could triumph over circumstance. But for Jamie, it would always be simpler than that, a reminder that doing the right thing was its own reward, even when that reward came in forms you never could have imagined. As she looked out the window of her design studio at the bustling city below, Jamie smiled at the knowledge that somewhere in Monaco, Sofia Castellano was probably working in her foundation office, fighting to protect the Mediterranean ecosystem she loved so much. And in some restaurant bathroom, someone else was probably faced with a choice between right and wrong, their decision capable of changing not just their own life, but the lives of everyone they might touch along the way. The necklace had been returned, the debts had been paid, and the dreams had been realized. But the most important part of the story wasn't the fairy tale ending. It was the ordinary moment when an extraordinary choice had been made by someone who understood that integrity wasn't negotiable, regardless of the price tag attached to temptation. In the end, Jamie had learned that the most valuable things in life couldn't be found in jewelry stores or bank accounts. They lived in the connections between people, in the opportunities to lift others up, and in the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing you'd done the right thing when it mattered most. The Meridian diamond would eventually be passed down to future generations of the Castellano family, but the impact of Jamie's choice would ripple forward into a future none of them could have predicted, touching lives and changing destinies in ways that would make even a $12 million necklace seem like a bargain in comparison.